For 7 years, Jahangir believed his marriage was strong. Not perfect, no marriage truly is, but stable, safe, real. He worked hard, long hours, business trips, endless pressure, everything for the future he imagined with his wife, Savinch. Beautiful house, comfortable life, plans for children someday, growing old together. At least, that's what he thought. Because sometimes people continue loving honestly while the person beside them slowly stops. And the terrifying part is this: love rarely dies loudly at first. It dies quietly, inside hidden conversations, deleted messages, small lies, coldness pretending to be tiredness, distance pretending to be stress. But blind trust delays painful truth. And Jahangir trusted Savinch completely, maybe too completely. One rainy evening, everything changed. Jahangir drove home late after another exhausting business meeting. Headache, stress, exhaustion. Rain hit the windshield heavily while city lights blurred through the storm. When he finally entered the house, something felt strange immediately. Too quiet. No television, no music. Only the sound of water running upstairs. Savinch was showering. Jahangir loosened his tie tiredly and sat on the couch. Then, suddenly, a phone vibrated on the coffee table. Savinch's phone. Jahangir normally never touched it, never checked messages, never questioned her privacy, because trust had always felt natural between them. But tonight, something made him glance toward the screen. Just a reflex. And that single glance destroyed his entire world. A message appeared brightly across the lock screen. "I miss you already." Silence. The rain outside suddenly sounded louder. Jahangir stared at the message, frozen completely, heart slowing strangely, mind refusing to understand. Because betrayal feels impossible right until the exact second it becomes real. The phone vibrated again. Another message. When will he leave for Moscow again? Jahangir stopped breathing. Not emotionally, physically. His chest tightened painfully, hands turning cold. Because suddenly, his instincts already understood everything before his mind accepted it. Slowly, almost mechanically, he picked up the phone. The password opened immediately. His birthday, ironically. And then the truth appeared. Messages, photos, months of conversations, hidden meetings, secret hotel visits, plans, lies. The man's name was Kamran, Jahangir's closest friend, the same man who sat at their dinner table laughing with him weeks earlier. The same man who hugged him proudly during business celebrations. The same man he trusted like family. And suddenly, everything inside Jahangir collapsed at once. Not only marriage, not only friendship, reality itself. Because betrayal from strangers hurts, but betrayal from people you love destroys identity. Upstairs, the shower water stopped running. Panic finally hit Jahangir completely. Not loud panic, the numb, terrifying kind. He quickly placed the phone back exactly where it was, then sat silently staring at nothing. Moments later, Savinch walked downstairs drying her hair casually. Beautiful, relaxed, comfortable. And seeing her like that somehow hurt even more, because now every smile looked fake. Every memory felt poisoned. "Hey," she smiled softly. "You're home early." Jahangir looked at her quietly, and for the first time in 7 years, he felt like he was staring at a stranger. Savinch smiled naturally while walking into the kitchen. Completely normal, completely calm, and somehow that hurt Jahangir more than the messages themselves, because real guilt should look nervous, ashamed, broken. But Savinch looked comfortable, like betrayal had already become ordinary to her. "Did you eat?" she asked casually while opening the refrigerator. Jahangir stared at her silently for a second too long. then forced himself to answer normally. "Not yet." His voice sounded unfamiliar even to himself, too calm, too empty. Inside, his mind still replayed the same messages repeatedly. "I miss you already." When will he leave again? Every word felt like glass inside his chest, but somehow he stayed composed, because shock freezes people before pain fully arrives. Sevinch began preparing dinner casually, talking about ordinary things, neighbors, shopping, a TV show she watched earlier, and Jahangir realized something terrifying. She had become extremely good at lying. That realization hurt almost worse than the affair itself, because hidden betrayal requires practice, routine, comfort. At one point, Sevinch laughed softly at something on television, and Jahangir suddenly remembered another night months earlier, Kamran sitting in this exact living room, all three of them laughing together, drinking tea, talking about life. Meanwhile, those secret messages were probably already happening. The memory nearly made him physically sick. Dinner felt endless. Every movement became unbearable to watch. The way Sevinch smiled while checking her phone, the way she avoided leaving it near him too long now, the way she casually mentioned Kamran's name during conversation without hesitation. "Kamran called earlier," she said while eating. "He said your Moscow meeting might move to next month." Jahangir nearly stopped breathing again, because hearing her speak so naturally about the man she secretly betrayed him with felt horrifying. Still, he forced himself to remain calm. "What else did he say?" Jahangir asked quietly. Sevinch shrugged casually. "Nothing important." Lie. Direct lie. And suddenly, Jahangir understood something painful. The affair itself was not the only betrayal anymore. Now every conversation contained deception too. Every ordinary moment became contaminated. Later that night, Sevinch fell asleep beside him peacefully. Peacefully, while Jahangir stared at the dark ceiling, unable to move, unable to breathe normally, unable to understand how his entire life changed in one evening. Beside him, the woman he loved slept comfortably, and suddenly, he remembered the beginning of their relationship years ago, the tiny apartment they first rented together, struggling financially, dreaming together, promising loyalty forever. All those memories now felt corrupted somehow, because betrayal reaches backwards too. It poisons the past. At 3 a.m., Jahangir quietly got out of bed. The house felt suffocating. He walked downstairs slowly and sat alone in darkness. Rain still falling outside. Silence everywhere. Then suddenly, Sevinch's phone vibrated again upstairs. Jahangir closed his eyes painfully because he already knew who it was. And deep down, something inside him finally began changing, not exploding, hardening. Because once trust dies, love begins transforming into something colder. The next morning, Jahangir acted completely normal. Too normal. Sevinch noticed nothing. Or perhaps she underestimated him completely. Before leaving for work, she kissed his cheek lightly, the same lips that whispered love to another man. And somehow, Jahangir still stood there silently, because pain this deep does not create immediate chaos. First, it creates numbness, then observation, and now Jahangir had started watching everything carefully, every message, every excuse, every lie. Because before destroying his marriage, he needed to understand one thing completely. How long had the two people he trusted most been destroying him behind his back? The next few days felt unreal, like living inside someone else's nightmare. Jahangir continued working, attending meetings, answering calls, smiling when necessary. But inside, nothing felt normal anymore. Because once betrayal enters a person's life, ordinary moments become unbearable. Coffee tastes different. Home feels unfamiliar. Even silence changes. Meanwhile, Sevinch acted exactly the same. Comfortable, relaxed, almost loving sometimes. And that terrified Jahangir most. Because guilt should create distance, yet somehow she had learned how to live two lives at once. One evening, Kamran invited Jahangir to dinner casually. "Brother, it's been too long," he laughed through the phone. "We should catch up." Jahangir froze silently for a second, then answered calmly, "Sure." After the call ended, he stared at the wall for several long moments, because deep down, Jahangir already knew this dinner would destroy something permanently inside him. The restaurant was expensive. Elegant lights, soft music, luxury atmosphere. Exactly the kind of place they always visited together before. Years of friendship lived inside memories like this. Business trips, celebrations, late-night conversations. Trust, real trust. Or at least what Jahangir thought was trust. Kamran arrived smiling confidently as always. Perfect suit, expensive watch, charismatic energy. The kind of man people naturally liked. The kind of man Jahangir once admired deeply. "Brother," Kamran smiled warmly while hugging him. And suddenly, Jahangir nearly felt sick, because the same hands hugging him now had touched his wife secretly. Still, he hugged him back calmly. Performance. Everything had become performance now. They sat across from each other, ordering food normally. Kamran joked casually, talked about business, travel, politics, completely relaxed. And Jahangir realized something horrifying. Kamran truly believed he would never discover the truth. That level of confidence only comes from long deception. At one point, Kamran casually mentioned Sevinch's name. "How is your wife doing?" The sentence almost made Jahangir laugh, not from humor, from disbelief. Because betrayal becomes surreal when liars continue pretending innocence directly to your face. "She's good," Jahangir answered quietly. Kamran nodded, smiling. "You're lucky." Those two words shattered something inside Jahangir completely. Lucky. The irony felt unbearable. For several seconds, Jahangir simply stared at his friend silently. And suddenly, he remembered university years, being broke together, helping each other, protecting each other during difficult times. Years of brotherhood, all destroyed for secret excitement and betrayal. How fragile loyalty suddenly looked now. "Everything okay?" Kamran asked carefully, noticing his silence. Jahangir smiled faintly. "Just tired." Lie. Now everyone around him lied constantly. Even him. After dinner, Kamran stepped outside the restaurant beside him as rain lightly covered the streets again. Funny how painful moments always seemed to arrive with rain now. "By the way," Kamran said casually, "Sevinch told me you might travel again next month." Jahangir froze internally, because suddenly he understood something else horrifying. They talked about him constantly, planned around him, scheduled lies together. The humiliation suddenly burned hotter than sadness. But somehow, he still stayed calm. "How close did you become?" Jahangir asked quietly. Kamran laughed, slightly confused. "What do you mean?" Jahangir looked directly into his eyes for the first time that night, long, carefully, and for one dangerous second, Kamran's smile weakened slightly. Instinct, maybe guilt finally recognizing danger, but Jahangir simply shook his head lightly afterward. Nothing. Then he walked toward his car calmly, leaving Kamran standing there slightly unsettled for reasons he couldn't explain. Because deep down, liars eventually sense truth approaching. And now, Jahangir had stopped searching for answers. He already had them. What remained now was deciding what kind of man betrayal would turn him into. After the dinner with Kamran, something inside Jahangir changed permanently. The numbness slowly disappeared. Now, pain became sharper, colder, more personal, because betrayal feels different once you look directly into the eyes of the people hurting you. And Kamran's smile haunted him constantly now, that fake brotherhood, that fake loyalty. Meanwhile, Savinj continued acting normal at home, cooking dinner, watching television beside him, asking ordinary questions. And somehow, every normal moment now felt terrifyingly fake. One evening, Savinj left her phone charging upstairs while showering again. Jahangir stared at it silently from the hallway, his chest already tightening. Part of him wanted to ignore it, pretend, escape, because sometimes truth becomes too painful to survive. But another part of him needed certainty, needed the full reality, even if it destroyed him completely. Slowly, he picked up the phone again. Messages, photos, voice recordings. Jahangir froze. Voice recordings? His hand trembled slightly now, and against his better judgment, he pressed play. At first, only laughter, background music, restaurant sounds. Then Kamran's voice appeared clearly. "You think he suspects anything?" Savinj laughed softly. "No." Jahangir stopped breathing instantly, because hearing betrayal hurts differently than reading it. Voices make it real, alive, cruel. The recording continued. Kamran laughed again. "He trusts us too much." More laughter. Then Savinj said the sentence that shattered Jahangir completely. "He's a good man, just boring." Silence. Total silence inside Jahangir's soul. Because suddenly, 7 years of loyalty collapsed into one humiliating sentence. Boring. All the sacrifices, all the hard work, all the nights building a future for them, reduced to that. The recording continued playing mercilessly. Kamran joked about Jahangir's business trips. Savinj mocked how easily he trusted people. Then came another sentence, one Jahangir would remember for the rest of his life. "If he ever finds out, he'll break." Kamran laughed quietly. "He loves you too much." And suddenly, Jahangir realized something horrifying. They weren't only betraying him, they were disrespecting his love too, using it, mocking it. That realization hurt deeper than the affair itself, because betrayal without respect destroys dignity. Jahangir slowly lowered the phone, hands shaking badly now. Not from anger, from heartbreak, real heartbreak, the kind that physically hurts inside the chest. Upstairs, the shower water stopped. But this time, Jahangir couldn't force himself back into normalcy anymore. He sat alone in darkness downstairs, while the recording replayed inside his head repeatedly. "He's a good man, just boring." Suddenly, he remembered all the moments he ignored warming signs, the emotional distance, the hidden smiles at her phone, the colder kisses. Everything finally connected. And painfully, he realized something else, too. Savinj probably stopped loving him long before the affair even began. The cheating was only the symptom. The real death happened earlier, when respect disappeared. Moments later, Savinj walked downstairs, casually drying her hair again, exactly like the night everything started. But this time, Jahangir looked at her differently. No confusion left, no denial, only clarity. Painful clarity. "You're quiet tonight," Savinch said softly. Jahangir stared at her for several seconds, long enough for nervousness to finally appear in her eyes slightly. Then quietly, emotionlessly, he asked, "Am I really that boring?" The color disappeared from Savinch's face instantly, because in that exact moment, she understood everything. He knew. The room became completely silent. Not ordinary silence, the terrifying kind that arrives when a lie finally collapses. Savinch stood frozen near the stairs, still holding the towel in her hands. But now, her face had changed completely. No calmness, no comfort, only panic, because the secret life she carefully controlled for months had suddenly shattered in one sentence. "Am I really that boring?" Jahangir repeated nothing else. He didn't need to. The truth already stood naked between them. Savinch opened her mouth slightly, then closed it again, searching desperately for words, excuses, anything. But betrayal sounds pathetic once exposed. Finally, very quietly, she whispered, "You checked my phone?" The question almost made Jahangir laugh, not because it was funny, because somehow she still focused on the phone instead of the betrayal itself. Jahangir slowly stood up. His eyes looked exhausted now, older somehow. "I heard the recording," he said calmly, and suddenly all color disappeared from Savinch's face completely, because recordings cannot be denied. Voices destroy excuses. The room felt colder now. Even the rain outside sounded distant somehow. For several long seconds, neither moved. Then finally, Savinch sat down slowly, like her legs no longer worked properly. Jahangir remained standing, watching her. And deep down, he realized something heartbreaking. The woman sitting in front of him no longer felt like his wife, only someone wearing her face. "How long?" he asked quietly. Savinch stared at the floor silently. "How long?" Jahangir repeated, louder this time. 8 months, she whispered. 8 months. The number physically hurt, because suddenly Jahangir's mind replayed almost an entire year differently. Birthdays, family dinners, vacations, all contaminated now, every memory poisoned by hidden truth. "With Kamran?" he asked quietly. Savinch nodded slowly. Jahangir closed his eyes painfully for 1 second. His best friend, the man he trusted most. The humiliation burned hotter than rage now. Finally, Savinch whispered shakily, "It wasn't supposed to happen." Jahangir looked at her silently, because every betrayal story begins with those exact words. Not supposed to happen, yet somehow it always continues happening repeatedly afterward. "You laughed at me," Jahangir said quietly. Savinch immediately looked up, tears finally appearing now. "It wasn't like that." "I heard it." His voice remained calm, too calm, and somehow that calmness frightened Savinch more than shouting would have. "You laughed at my trust." Silence. "You called me boring." Savinch began crying openly now, but strangely, watching her cry no longer softened Jahangir at all, because some pain kills sympathy temporarily. "Do you know what hurts most?" Jahangir asked softly. Not angry, broken. "I would have died for you." Those words shattered the room completely, because deep down, both of them knew they were true. Jahangir loved honestly, faithfully, completely, and somehow that pure love became the exact thing they mocked behind his back. Savinch covered her face, crying harder now. "I'm sorry," but the apology sounded small, weak,
late, because some apologies arrive after too much damage already exists. "Do you love him?" Jahangir asked suddenly. Sevinch froze. Long silence. Then finally, very quietly, "I don't know." That answer destroyed the last piece of their marriage still breathing, because uncertainty means emotional betrayal already reached too deep. Jahangir slowly nodded himself, as if finally accepting reality completely. Then he walked toward the front door, calmly. "Where are you going?" Sevinch cried. Jahangir stopped briefly, without turning around, and when he finally spoke, his voice sounded emptier she had ever heard before. "I can forgive mistakes, but I can't sleep beside people who destroy me secretly." Those words hit Sevinch harder than screaming ever could, because suddenly she realized something terrifying. She hadn't only lost trust tonight, she lost the man who truly loved her most in the world. The front door closed softly behind him moments later, and inside the silent house, their marriage quietly died.
The house felt different after Jahangir left, not quieter, empty, painfully empty. For the first time in years, Sevinch noticed sounds she normally ignored. The ticking clock, the refrigerator humming softly, rain touching the windows, and underneath all of it, silence. The kind of silence that forces people to face themselves honestly. At first, Sevinch believed Jahangir only needed time, space, a few days to calm down, because deep down, she still underestimated the damage betrayal causes. She texted him constantly, "I'm sorry, please answer, we can fix this." No response. Hours became days, days became weeks, nothing. And slowly, panic replaced confidence. Meanwhile, Kamran suddenly changed too. The charming, exciting, secret relationship no longer felt romantic now that everything collapsed publicly, because affairs survive inside fantasy. Reality destroys them quickly. Kamran stopped calling as often, stopped promising things, stopped sounding brave. One evening, Sevinch finally confronted him angrily. "You said you loved me." Kamran sighed tiredly through the phone. Everything became complicated. Complicated. That word hit her strangely hard, because suddenly she realized something horrifying. The man who helped destroy her marriage was not willing to sacrifice anything for her afterward. Not reputation, not friendship, not comfort. Nothing. And painfully, for the first time, Sevinch understood the difference between excitement and loyalty. Kamran enjoyed secrecy. Jahangir built a life. The realization arrived too late, far too late. Meanwhile, Jahangir completely disappeared from her life. He stopped answering friends, too. Work messages only. Cold, professional, distant. Like the emotional version of him simply shut down completely. And suddenly, Sevinch began noticing something terrifying inside herself. She missed ordinary things most. The way Jahangir brought tea late at night while she watched television. The way he checked if she arrived home safely. The way he remembered tiny details about her without trying. His quiet loyalty. His stability. His goodness. The same goodness she once called boring. Now, that boring love felt priceless. One rainy evening, Sevinch sat alone inside the dark house, staring at old photos on her phone. Vacation pictures, birthday smiles, small, happy moments. And suddenly, she started crying uncontrollably, because for the first time, she truly understood what she destroyed. Not only marriage, safety, trust, a man who loved her honestly. And deep down, she realized another painful truth too. People rarely understand the value of peace until chaos replaces it.
Weeks later, Sevinch accidentally saw Jahangir again for the first time. A business event, luxury hotel, crowded hall. And the moment she noticed him across the room, her chest tightened painfully, because he looked different now, not happier, harder, calmer, like pain had aged him emotionally. But somehow he also looked stronger, more distant from needing anyone's approval. People surrounded him respectfully, talking business, laughing politely. And suddenly, Sevinch realized something terrifying. Life continued moving without her. Meanwhile, Jahangir noticed her too. Their eyes met briefly across the room, years of memories passing silently between them. Love, betrayal, pain. Then Jahangir looked away calmly and continued his conversation. No anger, no drama. And somehow, that hurt Sevinch more than hatred would have, because indifference is colder than rage. Later that night, Sevinch cried alone harder than ever before, not because Jahangir yelled, because he didn't, because the man who once loved her endlessly finally learned how to live without her. And suddenly, Sevinch realized another painful truth of all. People only realize the value of a someone after becoming the reason they lost them forever.
Months passed quietly after the divorce. Not easy months, not peaceful ones either, but survivable. And sometimes, after betrayal, survival itself becomes an achievement. Jahangir buried himself inside work completely. Business trips, meetings, late nights at the office, anything to avoid thinking too much. Because silence still hurt. Certain songs hurt. Rain hurt. Even ordinary memories attacked unexpectedly sometimes. A restaurant, a perfume scent, an old photo hidden inside a drawer. Trauma lives strangely inside small things. But despite the pain, something inside Jahangir slowly healed too. Not trust, that would take much longer, but dignity, self-respect. The part of him betrayal almost destroyed completely. And over time, he stopped checking Sevinch's social media, stopped wondering about Cameron, stopped replaying the recordings every night. Because eventually, even heartbreak grows tired. One cold evening, Jahangir sat alone inside his office finishing paperwork late. The city lights glowed through the large windows behind him. Quiet night. Peaceful. Then suddenly, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. At first, he almost ignored it, but something made him answer anyway. Hello? Silence. Weak breathing. Then finally, a woman's voice whispered shakily, Jahangir? His chest tightened instantly. Sevinch. But something sounded wrong immediately. Very wrong. Her voice trembled badly, like someone crying for hours, or someone terrified. What happened? Jahangir asked automatically. Instinct. Because despite everything, part of him still cared. More silence. Then finally, Sevinch whispered the sentence that froze his blood completely. Cameron is dead. The room became silent instantly. Jahangir stopped moving, stopped thinking, because no matter how much betrayal existed, death changes the atmosphere around everything. How? He asked quietly. Sevinch began crying softly. Car accident. Rain started hitting Jahangir's office windows harder outside. Funny how life's cruelest moments always arrived with rain somehow. He was drunk, Sevinch whispered brokenly. He crashed into a divider last night. Jahangir slowly sat down, mind blank, because suddenly years of friendship flashed through his memory again. University days, laughing together, dreams, brotherhood, then betrayal, then death. Life had ended before reconciliation was even possible. And strangely, Jahangir felt no victory, no satisfaction, only sadness, heavy sadness,
Because once upon a time, Cameron truly was his friend, before weakness destroyed his character, before betrayal destroyed everything. Sevinch cried harder through the phone now. I don't know who else to call. Those words shattered him unexpectedly, because suddenly he understood something painful. Despite all the destruction, when real tragedy arrived, her heart still searched for him first, the man who once made her feel safe. Jahangir closed his eyes tiredly. What do you need? He asked quietly. And for the first time in many months, Sevinch broke completely. Not controlled crying, not emotional manipulation, real collapse. Because suddenly, the fantasy relationship that once seemed exciting ended with death, emptiness, guilt, and loneliness. Meanwhile, the stable man she betrayed still answered the phone when she was broken. That realization crushed her. Why are you still kind to me? She whispered painfully. Long silence. Then Jahangir answered honestly. Because your mistakes changed my marriage, but I don't want them to change my humanity too. Those words made Sevinch cry even harder, because suddenly she remembered exactly why she once fell in love with him in the first place. Not excitement, not thrill, his heart. And now she finally understood its value only after losing it forever.
The funeral took place 2 days later. Gray skies covered the city. Cold wind moved quietly through the cemetery, and rain threatened to fall again. Jahangir almost didn't come. For hours he stared at the black suit hanging near his closet, debating with himself, because attending meant facing everything again. The betrayal, the friendship, the memories, the pain. But in the end, he went. Not for the affair, for the years before it, the years when Kamran was truly his brother. Life is complicated like that sometimes. People can become terrible later without erasing who they once were. When Jahangir arrived, the atmosphere felt heavy. Quiet crying, muted conversations, dark umbrellas under gray skies. And then he saw Sevinch standing alone near the back. Black coat, pale face, eyes swollen from endless tears. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally, like guilt had slowly crushed something inside her. For several seconds, they simply stared at each other silently. No anger left now, only sadness, the kind sadness people feel after watching something beautiful die slowly. Sevinch walked toward him carefully, almost nervously, and suddenly Jahangir remembered the first time he saw her years ago. Bright smile, confident eyes, excitement. How strange life felt now. "Thank you for coming," she whispered softly. Jahangir nodded once. No unnecessary words, because some relationships eventually become too damaged for normal conversation. The funeral ended quietly. People slowly disappeared afterward, until eventually only Jahangir and Sevinch remained near the cemetery gates. Rain finally started falling softly around them. Neither rushed to leave, because deep down, both understood this would probably be the last time they ever stood together like this again. For several long moments, they simply listened to rain. Then suddenly, Sevinch spoke through tears again. "I destroyed everything." Jahangir stayed silent, because denying it would be dishonest, but blaming her endlessly felt pointless now too. "I thought excitement meant happiness, but peace was happiness." Those words hung painfully between them, because they were true, painfully true. Sevinch looked at him with eyes full of regret. "The worst part is," she continued, "you never deserved any of it." Jahangir looked away toward the rain-covered city quietly, then finally answered, "Maybe not.
But pain teaches people things comfort never can. Savinch cried silently hearing that, because even after everything, he still spoke gently, still carried dignity, still refused cruelty. And suddenly, she understood the final lesson too late. Good people often seem ordinary until life replaces them with chaos. Then, their value becomes priceless. "I loved you," Savinch whispered desperately. Jahangir closed his eyes briefly, then answered with heartbreaking honesty, "I believe you did." Silence. Heavy silence. But love without loyalty eventually destroys itself. Those words ended everything quietly, not dramatically, not with screaming, just truth. And sometimes truth hurts more permanently than anger ever could. The rain became heavier now, cars passing slowly nearby, the world continuing normally despite broken hearts. Finally, Jahangir stepped backward slightly. Savinch immediately realized what the movement meant. Goodbye. Real goodbye, this time. Tears rolled down her face uncontrollably, because deep inside, she knew she would compare every future relationship to him forever, to his patience, his loyalty, his goodness, and nobody would ever feel the same again. Jahangir looked at her one final time, not with hatred, not with revenge, only quiet sadness for the life they almost had. Then softly, he said the final words she would remember forever. "I hope one day you forgive yourself." And with that, he turned away into the rain, walking slowly toward his car alone. Not healed completely, maybe never fully healed, but wiser, stronger, and finally free from the people who broke him secretly. Meanwhile, Savinch stood crying under the gray sky, watching the man she once loved disappear forever. And for the rest of her life, she would carry one painful truth inside her heart. Sometimes, people lose the most valuable thing they ever had because they mistake loyalty for boredom. If this story touched your heart, remember this: excitement is temporary. Real peace is rare. Never betray people who love you honestly, because loyal hearts are difficult to find and impossible to replace once broken. And sometimes, the quiet person beside you is actually the greatest blessing your life will ever give you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because some stories don't just entertain us, they warn us before we make irreversible mistakes.